In our headlines on this Monday afternoon, August 19th, here in South Korea. South Korea and the US have begun their annual military drill today to strengthen their defense posture against North Korea's provocations ranging from ballistic missile testing to GPS jamming to cyber attacks. Meanwhile, Seoul, Washington and Tokyo mark their first anniversary of the Camp David summit this past Sunday. That is August 18th, amid prospects of changes in leadership in the US and in neighboring Japan. And in the US, the Democratic Party's National Convention kicks off in Chicago on this Monday for 4 days, during which a ceremonial vote will be held to nominate Vice President Kamala Harris for the country's November presidential race. Military officials from Seoul and Washington have kicked off their annual summer training, which will last until August 29th and seek to strengthen their defense posture against Pyongyang's provocations. Our correspondent Peunji has details.
A major combined military exercise between Seoul and Washington officially kicked off on Monday. The 11-day Ulji Freedom Shield exercise that's set to take place in South Korea until next Thursday includes computer-based simulation and combined field training exercises, focusing on bolstering the Allies' defense posture against threats from Pyongyang. It also includes civil defense drills involving government agencies with exercises that simulate a nuclear attack from North Korea for the first time this year. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff also said this year's exercise will involve some 19,000 South Korean troops and that it plans to carry out more combined field training. There will be a total of 48 outdoor drills, which is 10 more than last year, including field maneuvers and live fire exercises. The military also said the exercise will further strengthen the Allies' capability and readiness to defend against North Korea's weapons of mass destruction by utilizing a variety of assets on land, at sea, in the air, as well as in cyberspace. Meanwhile, military officials from Seoul and Washington are watching closely for a potential provocation from North Korea, as Pyongyang has been strongly criticizing the large-scale military exercises, calling them a rehearsal for an invasion. Peunji, Arirang News.
In related news, President Yoon Suk-yeol, for his part, has highlighted the importance of the annual Ulji Freedom Shield, pointing to the presence of forces working secretly within society to endanger democracy. To take a listen.
먼저 허위 정보와 가짜 뉴스 유포, 사이버 공격과 같은 북한의 회색지대 도발에 대한 대응 태세를 강화해야 합니다. 우리 사회 내부에는 자유민주주의 체제를 위협하는 반국가 세력들이 곳곳에서 암약하고 있습니다.
Speaking at a cabinet meeting earlier on this Monday, President Yoon added these forces seek to fuel division and confusion. He also warned of possible war and called on members of the public to abide by government calls, that is, for caution during the 11-day military exercise. On the social front, the president made note of the start of the second school semester and the expanded operation of Nilbom School, a public after-school program in support of working parents. Meanwhile, on the sports front, President Yoon praised yet again Team Korea's performance at the Paris Olympics, while sharing hopes for great games by the country's team to the Paralympics starting next Wednesday. The trilateral summit among South Korea, the US and Japan at Camp David last year saw the three countries sharing their commitment to consult with each other on a wide array of matters through an annual leaders meeting, as well as that of separate trilateral diplomatic, defense and economic officials. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
The leaders of South Korea, the United States and Japan reaffirmed their resolve to tackling North Korea's nuclear threat and other regional and global challenges as they seek to preserve commitments made at their Camp David summit last year. In a joint statement to mark 1 year since their first ever standalone trilateral meeting, President Yoon Suk-yeol, US President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on Sunday said they remain inspired by the spirit of Camp David and the Camp David principles as a roadmap for cooperation, as well as the commitment to consult on threats and challenges to their collective interests and security.
Previously limited to traditional security areas, the scope of trilateral cooperation has become comprehensive to include economic security, advanced technology, cybersecurity, development, and human exchanges.
According to Seoul's Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Tae-ho, major achievements include a real-time system for sharing North Korean missile warning information, the first ever multi-domain Freedom Edge exercise between their militaries, and the establishment of a trilateral security cooperation framework. The three countries have also been making progress on economic security dialogue, early warning systems to stabilize supply chains, space security dialogue, quantum research, and youth exchanges. The most significant outcome of the Camp David summit has been to set in stone that trilateral cooperation by establishing annual meetings between leaders, national security advisors, and ministers of foreign affairs, defense, and trade. Such efforts to institutionalize the Camp David framework are becoming all the more important, as Japan and the US will have new leaders take office in the coming months.
This trilateral cooperation was attainable under the top-down approach, which was initiated by three leaders. In this sense, if domestic politics are changed, this architecture might be affected. In short, this type of top-down approach is rarely expected any longer if three leaders are gone or become weaker in their political power. In this vein, a key question should be whether a bottom-up approach can function as an alternative to a top-down approach in the era of post-three leaders.
A senior Korean official on Sunday said Washington and Tokyo value the importance of the South Korea-US alliance and South Korea-Japan relations, as well as the significance of Camp David, indicating that their support for the Camp David mechanism remains sturdy, regardless of political changes. Still, the official acknowledged the need to create the institutional infrastructure to ensure the three-way partnership is stable in the mid to long term, adding that the three governments are sharing their views on launching a trilateral cooperation secretariat. While discussions on holding a leaders' summit are in the early stages, the annual gathering is likely to take place on the sidelines of a multilateral conference later this year. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And in the U.S., the latest public poll shows Vice President Kamala Harris running ahead of her rival Donald Trump as her party's national convention is set to start later today. Our Lee Jae-myung has more.
Just a day before the Democratic Party's national convention kicks off in Chicago on Monday, another nationwide poll on the upcoming U.S. presidential election shows Vice President Kamala Harris leading former President Donald Trump. In the poll conducted jointly by Washington Post, ABC, and Ipsos on 2,335 adults nationwide from August 9th to the 13th and released on Sunday, the Harris-Walz camp leads the Trump-Vance camp 49 to 45% among registered voters, while the vice president has a 51% to 45% lead over Trump among likely voters. However, the latest poll shows that Trump leads Harris when it comes to some key issues in the United States. Respondents believe that Trump would do a better job in dealing with issues like the economy, inflation, immigration, and the prolonged conflict in the Middle East. When it comes to other issues like healthcare, abortion, and race relations, Harris has a double-digit lead over Trump. The latest poll also shows that Harris is enjoying growing support from swing voters. While Trump previously had a 4 percentage point lead over Joe Biden from independents in July, Sunday's poll showed that Harris has an 11 percentage point lead over Trump. Considered the classic swing voters, independents have gone with the winner in 9 of the last 12 presidential elections. Harris has seen slight leads over Trump in a number of other nationwide polls, but many pundits believe it's still too close to predict the outcome of November's election. While Harris officially won the Democratic presidential nomination in an online vote 2 weeks ago, she will accept the party's nomination and give her acceptance speech on Thursday, the last day of the 4-day national convention. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Also on the international front, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel to promote efforts to ease tensions in the Middle East. Our Yoon has the latest.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in the Israeli capital of Tel Aviv on Sunday with hopes of securing a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal. But just hours after landing, Hamas raised doubts over an agreement being reached. After 2 days of talks in Doha last week, the mediating countries, Qatar, the United States, and Egypt, delivered the latest proposal to Hamas. The Palestinian group's response on Sunday was that the proposal was aligned with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent positions, saying that he refuses to end the war and withdraw Israeli forces from Gaza, including along the border with Egypt. Hamas reiterated that these were two conditions the group sees as the basis for any agreement, and said Netanyahu is responsible for thwarting the efforts of mediators by delaying the reaching of an agreement. Meanwhile, Netanyahu insists that pressure should be put on Hamas and not Israel, adding that the militant group did not send a delegation for ceasefire talks. Blinken is set to meet senior Israeli leaders, including the Prime Minister, on Monday. And following his meetings in Israel, Blinken will move on to Cairo for further talks in an effort to close the gap between Israel and Hamas to reach an agreement. Meanwhile, violence continued in Gaza on Sunday. Palestinian health authorities said Israeli airstrikes killed at least 21 people in Gaza, including 6 children. 이은진, Arirang News.
Lee Jae-myung is retaking the reins of the opposition Democratic Party of Korea, having garnered a remarkable majority of the votes cast. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
At its national convention on Sunday at the K-Spo Dome in Songpa-gu district of southeastern Seoul, the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea announced its new leadership. Lee Jae-myung secured his second term with a landslide victory, winning 85.4% of the vote and beating 2 other candidates. He broke his own record set 2 years ago for the highest vote share ever for a DP leader and became the first leader in 24 years to serve 2 consecutive terms. The results were based on votes from dues-paying party members, which accounted for 56%, 14% from party delegates, and the remaining 30% coming from public opinion polls. In his acceptance speech, Lee emphasized the importance of improving people's livelihoods.
We will become a more competent party dedicated to improving people's livelihoods. Let's unite the wisdom and strength of our members and the public to build a better and new South Korea.
He also offered to meet with President Yoon to discuss pending state affairs. And during the national convention, 5 Supreme Council members, Kim Min-seok, Chun Hyun-hee, Han Jun-ho, Kim Byung-ju, and Lee Yeon-ju were also elected. They are considered hardline supporters of Lee Jae-myung, creating a leadership that is strongly aligned with him. Although Lee Jae-myung's second term has begun, his legal challenges are expected to remain significant variables as he currently faces several court battles. These include corruption charges related to property development projects during his time as mayor of Seongnam City, as well as allegations of his involvement in illegal money transfers to North Korea. His first court verdict on election law violation charges is expected in October.
With Lee now chosen as the new leader, he's expected to focus on both improving people's livelihoods and taking a strong stance against the government as key elections lie ahead, including the presidential election in 2027. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
In other news, KTX services have resumed between Daegu and Gyeongju following a derailment this past weekend. According to National Railroad Operator Korail, train services are back on track as of this Monday. On Sunday at 4:38 p.m., a KTX Sancheon train headed for Busan from Seoul derailed when one of its wheels went off the tracks near Komo Station in Daegu. All 384 passengers were safely transferred onto a new train and no injuries were reported. Korea's baseball league set a new single-season attendance record this past weekend. According to the Korea Baseball Organization, on Sunday alone, over 91,000 spectators gathered across 5 stadiums nationwide. The latest number has raised this season's total attendance to almost 8.5 million, the highest ever. In fact, pundits predict this season may see spectators surging past 10 million for the first time. Out of the season's 720 games, 573 matches have been played and 147 remain. Up next, we shed light on an annual festival in the southern coastal city of Tongyeong that seeks to pay tribute to a hero whose naval strategy during the Battle of Hansan Island served to change the course of war between Korean and Japanese invaders in the late 16th century. Our An Seung-jing takes a trip into history.
1592, Japan's Hideyoshi regime invaded the Korean peninsula. It took just 20 days for Japan to capture the Joseon capital, Hanyang. But one battle changed the course of the war. That battle was won by Korea's greatest naval leader, Admiral Lee Jae-myung. The narrow waters below me is where Admiral Lee Jae-myung achieved his famous maritime victory using the islands and bays of Korea's southern coastline to his advantage. The Battle of Hansan Island was crucial in bringing back the momentum for Korea. And to honor this, every year, the south coast city of Tongyeong hosts the Hansan Battle Festival.
This festival is not about eating, drinking, and merely having fun. It inherits the spirit of Admiral Lee, which was about being loyal to the country, loving his people, and being loyal to one's parents. This festival should be known beyond our country.
This year is the 63rd festival. The 6-day festival covers as much of the city as it can, hosting events by the port, in the city, and in other areas.
And I really like Korean traditions, and I also wanted to learn more about the history. I knew about Lee General, but I did not know about this battle, so I also got to learn and to enjoy the tradition, so that's why I came.
The highlight is a historical reenactment of the Battle of Hansan Island.
조선의 수군들이야! 죽기를 각오하면 반드시 살 것이오. 살기를 동하면 패전하여 반드시 죽을 것이다.
Among the ships is the well-known Gobukseon, or turtle ship. A warship used by the Korean Navy, its name derives from its metal covering, which resembles a turtle shell. These ships, alongside Panokseon warships, were used in South Korea's strategic attacks to destroy the Japanese fleets. When the Japanese Navy arrived, Admiral Lee Jae-myung ordered the Korean Navy to spread its ships into a crane wing shape known as hagikjin. Despite Korea having fewer ships, it destroyed many Japanese ships and cut off Japan's supply of food and weapons. The Joseon Naval Headquarters that Admiral Lee commanded was first established on Hansan-do Island and later on moved to Tongyeong.
Tongyeong as a whole used to be the headquarters itself. There was no war as devastating as the Imjin War. We were able to win because Admiral Lee put his life out there. The war was on the sea, and we had both the Gobukseon and Panokseon warships.
Saebyongwan Hall, which is the main building and the only building remaining after the annexation by Japan, literally translates to Hall of Washing Weapons, which showed hope that the war would end soon and peace would prosper. The city of Tongyeong is famous for its beautiful coastal surroundings. But what makes it really special is the culture and history, especially the great victory that became a foundation for Korea today. An Seung-jin, Arirang News, Tongyeong.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Ukraine continues its incursion into Russia's Kursk region, with the Ukrainian Air Force commander saying that it had destroyed a second strategic Russian bridge in a week. Ukraine's military on Sunday released aerial footage of the strike on a bridge reportedly over the same river in Zvanoye, the second bridge in the same region to be destroyed after another strategic bridge on Friday. Ukrainian Air Force commander Mykola Oleshchuk said that the aerial strikes will deprive the enemy of logistical capabilities, which significantly affects the course of hostilities. Ukraine is nearly 2 weeks into the biggest incursion into Russian territory seen since the Second World War. Kyiv says it has seized over 80 settlements across more than 1,000 square kilometers in the Kursk region since its surprise attack on August 6th. The Kremlin has vowed to retaliate, calling the Ukrainian incursion into Russian territory a major provocation. Thailand's new Prime Minister, Paetongtarn Shinawatra, was endorsed by the country's king on Sunday, officially confirming her new position 2 days after Parliament voted in her favor. 37-year-old Petongtan was approved by Thailand's king, Maha Vajiralongkorn, in a formal ceremony in Bangkok after winning nearly 2/3 of the vote in the House of Representatives on Friday. The daughter of divisive former Prime Minister and billionaire Thaksin Shinawatra, she became the youngest Prime Minister of Thailand only days after her predecessor was dismissed by the Constitutional Court. On Saturday, the new PM's father was granted an amnesty by the king from serving the remainder of an 8-year sentence for graft and abuse of power. Petongtan is the third member of her family to serve as a prime minister after her father and aunt. Large protests in India over a trainee doctor's rape and murder continued on Sunday despite the Indian Medical Association calling for an end to the strikes. Indian junior doctors marched on the streets of Kolkata with thousands of people who came out in solidarity on Sunday evening, chanting, "We want justice." A day before, on Saturday, a 24-hour strike organized by the Indian Medical Association had more than 1 million people expected to join, forcing hospitals and clinics across the country to turn away non-emergency patients. The Indian Medical Association described the rape and murder of 31-year-old female junior doctor around 10 days ago a crime of barbaric scale due to the lack of safe spaces for women, telling the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a letter that as 60% of India's doctors are women, safety and security measures are required to ensure the safety of their staff. Famed French actor Alain Delon, once described as the most beautiful man in cinema, died on Sunday, aged 88. He had reportedly been suffering poor health since a stroke in 2019, rarely leaving his estate in France's Val-de-Loire region. With his striking blue eyes, Delon was known for his on-screen tough guy persona in hits including Borsalino and The Samurai. French President Emmanuel Macron paid tribute to Delon on Sunday, saying the actor had made the world dream, while actress Brigitte Bardot said Delon's death left a huge void. Born just outside of Paris on November 8, 1935, Delon made almost 90 films during his career. Kim Si-young, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The extreme heat is showing no sign of easing up with a record-breaking stretch of consecutive tropical nights. Heat continues today with passing rain in the forecast for southern provinces and in Gangwon-do. The 9th typhoon of the season, however, Jongdari, has developed southwest of Japan's Okinawa. And as the typhoon develops further and moves northwards, it will drop heavy rainfall to southern parts of Korea from tomorrow. And into Wednesday, the south coast and Jeju could see more than 100 millimeters of downpours. And for now, rain is forecast to lash down tomorrow night. So those near the water enjoying a late summer vacation need to stay on high alert. Meanwhile, highs in most parts should hover around 35 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Now, the much-awaited Choseol, the second autumn season term, is this Thursday. But searing heat continues to bake much of Korea, at least through next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, and today we address the latest events here on the Korean Peninsula.
Different from a mixed complex, hyaluron performs itself as a single ingredient, which is light but fully dense. Hyaluron provides moisture and elasticity enhancement to skin at once. The total care to your skin concerns Hyaluron by Mizan.
Why do Korean people have such a good skin?
President Yoon Suk-yeol is prepared to promote political and economic cooperation if North Korea, quote, takes one step toward nuclear disarmament. Remarks to this end were shared during the president's recent speech to mark Liberation Day on August 15th. Hello and welcome. It's Monday, August 19th here in South Korea, and you're watching Issues and Insiders. I'm Min San-hee. We start this work week with a panel discussion regarding South Korea's offer of an olive branch of sorts to North Korea last week in light of Liberation Day. For more on this, I have Chloe Bognon, a correspondent for French news network France 24. Chloe, welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I also have Celia Ferretti, a correspondent for French daily Le Croix. Celia,
Hello.
It's good to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Right, Chloe, let's begin with details about President Yoon Suk-yeol's Liberation Day speech, which came last Thursday. I believe he proposed an inter-Korean working group. Tell us a bit more about this envisioned group and its purpose.
Yeah, so as you said, it was on National Liberation Day. It was a speech while also commemorating the 79th anniversary of independence of Korea from the Japan colonial rules in 1910 to 1945. What's interesting to note on this inter-Korean agreement is it's the first time President Yoon Suk-yeol has been taking a personal approach and has personally defined the formats, the level and the topic for inter-Korean dialogues. He has not done it since he started his mandate. So that's quite an important and strong point to notice on this thing. What he offered is a working level consultative body with North Korea. So the idea will be that the two Korea could be talking together and discuss ways to ease the tension that are starting to build up in the peninsula recently, and also to resume economic cooperation that's been completely stopped lately with North Korea trying to kind of close itself from South Korea. One of the goals is, some of the goals, sorry, also to release tensions and to handle some very practical issues. So economic cooperation, but also people-to-people exchange. And one of the strong points would be also to allow families from both Koreas that are separated since the war to kind of meet each other again, because it was possible for a time for family to come meet each other at the frontier, and it's not been possible for quite some years now. So the idea would be to, kind of have the best, more peaceful relationship, and to allow this kind of family reunion back, so that people don't forget about their cousins or relatives on the other side. As you said in the introduction, the point is, it would be possible if North Korea takes even one step towards denuclearization. What President Yoon Suk-yeol said is that the dialogue and cooperation can bring about substantive progress in inter-Korean relations. And that's really a fresh new offer for North Korea, that we also see some kind of similar steps and ends given to North Korea through the offer for humanitarian relief concerning the floods in the north of the country that have been offered last week, that North Korea has for the moment ignored.
Right. Now, this proposal for an inter-Korean working group came as part of his vision for unification here on the Korean Peninsula. That being said, Chloe, what are your thoughts on prospects of unification of the peninsula? I mean, how feasible is this plan, do you think?
For the moment, concerning this plan, I would say they're quite low for a few reasons. The first one is that relationship between the two Koreas are at the lowest at the moment. Let's remember that at the beginning of the year, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said that South Korea is a primary foe and that unification is no longer possible. He also said it's taking steps to cut ties with South Korea, saying that it's been redefined as a very separate, hostile enemy state. So North Korea is really closing itself regarding South Korea. Second thing is, first steps will be for North Korea to accept to go toward denuclearization, but we can see that at the moment North Korea is doing the opposite. It wants to advance its nuclear and its missile programs. We've seen that in a lot of ways in the different tests that have been done for missiles, even in what have been said about nuclear warheads, the way they are now arming more and more on the demilitarized side for North Korea. So it's maybe the point that would be really hard for North Korea to accept. Third thing is also, there's been multiple scenarios that could happen for unification. So it's been developed, especially at the end of the 90s, by the US group RAND, and they say that there are 4 scenarios that could be developed. So first one would be integration and peaceful unification, with the two countries coming back together. Second one would be collapse of one of the government and absorption. Third one would be unification through a conflict. And the last one would have been external action from a third country that would come in and play bigger parts on the discussion. So that's probably not to what we're going towards. But until now, the basis of all the other agreements that have been happening between Korea, the two Koreas, were more about peaceful, mutual respect, reconciliation, and cooperation. While here we could see that in the basis that have been put up by President Yoon Suk-yeol, it's more about unification through absorption. He's saying that we need to change the mind of North Korean people to make them hardly desire a freedom-based unification. And that's probably something that North Korea is going to ignore. They are not going to respond to that. So
right,
why it might be hard.
Right, the prospects are looking quite bleak then. Celia, President Yoon also proposed a global forum and fund to tackle North Korea's human rights violations. Again, do tell us a bit more about this global fund, this international conference that he has proposed to address North Korea's dismal human rights situation.
Indeed, during his speech, President Yoon Suk-yeol announced the need to inform the world about North Korean violation of human rights and to South Korea to actively participate in to raise awareness about this. For that, he announced 2 things. First, a round of conferences on human rights in North Korea and a fund to tackle this issue. So what is the goal of this? Well, mainly to attract support from the international community. Everybody knows how terrible the situation is in the region, but it's really important to remind people of the daily atrocities committed there. So that's the goal of these conferences. The government hoped to gather support from the international community, and maybe also some fund will bring me to my next point, the fund created. He did not specify exactly the government body that will manage this, but probably will be the Ministry of Unification, which has dealt with that kind of topic in the last decades. we will know more about it in a couple of days because the Ministry of Unification will have a press conference to detail more about President Yoon's policies. Now we can look at what has already been done in the past, in the past year exactly. The South Korean government allocated $500,000 for a round of conferences on human rights violation in North Korea. An important sum of money which received some critics actually because it's hard to know how effective it was. It's hard to quantify the success of this round of conferences. So whatever the budget is, that we will know later, maybe the government will have to justify these expenses. I'm sure the South Korean people will agree to the end goal of this, but maybe because it's their money, they will want to have some more reason to trust the government to handle the money properly and effectively. The fund is also supposed to help NGOs, non-governmental organizations, to help their work on human rights in North Korea. So maybe we don't know exactly how the fund will direct the money to them. Maybe they will pay for some salary expenses, or maybe to help with their work to raise funds, because that's the main issue of NGOs today. But in any case, I think they will have to reach a bipartisan agreement at the National Assembly, because it's not just a party problem, it's a nationwide problem. It's the history of Korea right there. So they will have to reach a sort of agreement to how this money will be managed and dealt with through this fund.
Right. Celia, in the meantime, though, what do you suppose are the broader implications of South Korea seeking to raise greater global awareness about the sufferings of people in North Korea?
Well, it is a good plan. It is a good plan, but it's also a risky one to target specifically North Korea in North Korea. During his speech, President Yoon Suk-yeol said it's important to help awaken the people of North Korea to the value of freedom. He gave an example on how North Korean defectors listening to South Korean radio, watching South Korean TV, it helped them to be more aware of the atrocities in the regime and the false propaganda of Kim Jong-un. And on that, he's really right. Helping the North Koreans know more about their own country is a key to bring outside information and help change the mentality, change the mind of the people there. Now the question is how they can do that. Since the beginning of summer, South Korea reactivated its border loudspeaker campaign, broadcasting information inside North Korea, and also the balloon propaganda by some activist group. It's still ongoing, but there might be other options that the government will consider in the future. But let's look at these two first. They're effective, that's no doubt about it, given the reaction of Kim Jong-un with the loudspeaker propaganda. But the problem is it can antagonize the regime and turn it hostile more than it already is. After the balloon sent by the activists containing propaganda leaflets, USB flash drives, and all that kind of things, that's when the trash balloons started to happen in response to this. It's not harmful, but it can be if we look back in 2015, for example, during a loudspeaker campaign, North Korea fired artillery on the border to try to turn down those loudspeakers. So at the time, we did not reach a conflict, but it could be a sign of escalation that can be dangerous. So how to send the message to North Korea is a tricky issue, because it can provoke a strong reaction and violent reaction from the North. The other question is the consequences on the North Korean people. We all know that the regime there really try to close everything outside information to reach the people. In 2022, I think, according to a South Korean report, a young man aged 22 was executed after listening to K-pop. So it's important to bring outside information, but we have to keep in mind the risk and all this kind of issue to really bring the change the best way possible.
Right, which in itself, of course, is a challenge, as you mentioned earlier. Meanwhile, Chloe, in North Korea, what has been reported about the regime celebration of Liberation Day?
Well, so Kim Jong-un visited, for example, a memorial honoring the Korean revolutionary soldiers who fought against Japan forces. He also did other visits, but the most important point, the one that was really discussed, is more on diplomatic ties and obviously it's concerning North Korea and Russia. So Vladimir Putin sent a congratulation message to North Korea, saying he was really focusing on, and I'm going to quote him there, "The bond forged as Soviet soldiers fought against Japan continues to serve as the basis of the ties between the two countries." So there he's referring to the fact that the Soviet Union was helping Kim Il-sung regime to be set in place during the Korean War, and before that was the Japanese occupation force. And he's really remembering that to speak about the ties today. North Korean Kim Jong-un, North Korean leader, he answered, reaffirming the pledge to deepen cooperation with Russia. He also spoke about the friendly feeling between the two armies, but also between the people. Also spoke about a common enemy. So was he referring to history? Was he speaking about nowadays situation? That's a bit of unclear. And obviously, he's saying that they want to develop the cooperation into a comprehensive strategic partnership and invincible comradeship. So just to remind people here, it's just in June, the two countries have been signing a pact on comprehensive strategic partnership that also include mutual defense agreements. So military points there were signed. So that's interesting to see that they are both trying to, through the army and through the historical events related to armies, they want to deepen their ties. The other thing that was interesting too is that Kim Jong-un also reiterated his country's support for Russian invasion in Ukraine, saying that the Russian people should defend their sovereign rights and security interests of the states. So he was really strongly putting himself forward to support Russia there in the war against Ukraine.
Right, and perhaps expanding on what Chloe's just said, Celia, Kim Jong-un, he actually glorified his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Now, some pundits say that this bilateral engagement between Pyongyang and Moscow will only last as long as the war in Ukraine. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's hard to know the exact detail of the relation between the two leaders, as most of the discussion is held behind closed doors. However, I have a feeling the relationship is a bit of imbalanced in terms of goal and expectation. For now, the relationship between Russia and North Korea seems purely transactional, meaning they will help each other probably as long as the war will be raging. The general assumption is that North Korea value for Russia will diminish as long as when the war is over. Let's take a look at what Moscow is trying to get from Pyongyang. The most obvious and immediate need is military, continued supplies of North Korean munition, missile, and maybe even personnel with the new treaty they signed together. According to South Korean media reports, North Korea sent technical and medical support units to Russian-occupied territories in Ukraine since the visit of Putin in Pyongyang, and is planning to send engineering troops for reconstruction work. So politically, Russia will also benefit from some sort of diplomatic support from North Korea. Since the war, Putin has been isolated on the international scene, so he's trying to get as much friends as he can get. But what is Kim Jong-un looking for in that relationship? Well, we can see that the opportunities North Korea imagines seems more long-term than Russia. Of course, supplying munition in exchange of money or maybe some food is good for the regime, but what Kim Jong-un is really trying to do is to create a framework to make some trade outside of UN sanction, for example, and to develop more bilateral cooperation. We can see some North Korean companies trying to access Russian market and sell their products there, which we haven't seen from Russian companies. So you can see the interest is really unbalanced. So for the regime, developing trade outside of sanction is essential to fund the regime, fund the nuclear program, fund all the army they have. But I think Moscow doesn't want that kind of long-term relationship with Pyongyang. So we'll see how it goes. And also we have to keep in mind that China is around the corner and China is watching, and maybe they will not like everything the two leaders can do together.
Right. And speaking about funding the country, Chloe, North Korea, it's reportedly planning to open its borders to international tourists in December. What has been shared about this plan thus far?
Yeah, so what we know is that one city will open back for tourists in December, so the city of Samcheon. We have the sources are just two China-based operators, and they have been sharing this on their social media, actually. So it's not any official communique, like nothing from the North Korean regime. But one of the companies said, so far Samcheon has been officially confirmed, but we're seeing that Pyongyang and other places will open too. So they're kind of trying to show to people that maybe North Korea can open again. Koryo Tour, that is another one of the operators, said that tourists could potentially visit other places as well in December. So that's where we can see that nothing is really official yet, apart from this city of Samcheon. And the question is, why this city specifically? So it's interesting to know that it's at the feet of Monpektu, that is the highest summit in North Korea, and it's well known for its winter activities. So opening it in December for winter activity tourists could be obviously a smart choice from the regime, and also it's a place that has been transformed recently in, if we follow the communique from the regime, a socialist utopia. So that was planned by leader Kim Jong-un himself, and the idea was to make major redevelopment in the city and on all the infrastructure around there for foreign tourists, actually. So there can still be doubts, obviously, about the country opening again, because for now North Korea has only allowed Russian tourists, and very recently only when the ties with Vladimir Putin have been tying up a bit more. It's been very restricted, some specific groups only. Even their own citizens have been locked out of the country for quite some time after COVID-19. So, and there will still be some restrictions. So South Korean citizens will not be allowed by North Korean regime in North Korea. And on the other side, US has also still bans its citizens from entering North Korea except on special missions. And that's been done since 2017 and the death of the American student Otto Warmbier, who was arrested and kept in prison in North Korea for some time. So that's the kind of limits and doubts that we can put on, will North Korea really open for international tourism or not?
Right, will it or will it not? And yet I have to ask this question, Celia, do you suppose such plans for tourism by North Korea are perhaps some indication of its efforts or its hopes to normalize ties with the international community, do you think?
Well, the question here is the scale of the reopening. As Chloe mentioned just before, for now, the tourists will only be allowed in the Samjeon, Monpektu area, which was already a travel hub, a travel destination. But it seems the regime wants to upgrade it. As she said, during a visit last month, Kim Jong-un mentioned new project in the Monpektu area, rebuild the Samjeon airport, turn a military ski base into a ski resort, new hotel, new railways, all the amenities for international tourism. This presumably aims to make the area a major tourist hub in the country, away from the capital, which was usually the main area the tourists would go. Kim's plan to revitalize the international tourism will be aimed at tourists from friendly countries, as he said last month. We'll see if that's still the case in December. But it raised question on who will be able to access North Korea. Monpektu area is close to the Chinese border, and that's usually where the Chinese tourists would go before. So, because it's easier to access from there. Also, Russian tourists has been in the country now, but we don't know yet about the Westerners, because usually they arrive in Pyongyang, and going to Pyongyang to Monpektu can be a really difficult trip. However, you can see that with all the renovation, construction work, and also just Kim Jong-un going there to make a speech and make some declaration, you can see he's really personally involved in this area and really wants to make this project successful. So you can see it's really a serious thing. And for North Korea, tourism is a hard cash money. They need that. They need that for their program, nuclear program. So I think this opening for tourism is a good way for them to attract more and different funding to keep the regime alive.
Right, I see. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this edition. Celia, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. And Chloe, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, we end this edition of Issues and Insiders right now. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.
is all around us. The military domain is no exception. Responsible AI in the military domain. Re-aim. It is not the technology that defines our future. It is how we use it. Responsible AI for safer tomorrow. Re-aim.